Feel free to have a seat here. And is he on the front or is he just on the flat collar?
He's on a Prong Caller.
Okay. And do you use that to correct him at all?
Yeah, I do.
Okay. How does that work?
Usually when he's excited, he requires harder corrections, but usually he'll respond to that.
Okay. Is he normally this vocal?
Yeah, he's pretty vocal.
So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to just pop him on my slip here.
Okay. Okay, buddy. Okay, buddy.
Yeah.
Yes.
So. I'll control him.
Okay.
So, I read over your consultation form real quick.
Yeah.
Seems like we got some reactivity.
Yeah, it's all about on leash when we're on walks and everything.
Okay.
Like usually if he's like playing with other dogs, like not on leash, he's totally fine, not like aggressive towards them. But I think it's like when he's on leash and like we're walking by dogs, like he will try to like bark at them and stuff.
Okay. Have you done any training yourself to, like, with a professional to curb it, or has it been stuff that you've just done yourself?
Yeah, so I actually work with a trainer back out in the suburbs, but I'm also like moving to Chicago, so I'm trying to.
Different.
Yeah. So I'm just like kind of looking to build off of that, because he has like done some training in that area, but he still reacts. So trying to work on that.
Sure. Is the trainer who recommended that you get a prong collar?
Yeah, he did.
Okay. And then when he becomes reactive, I'm assuming your trainer taught you how to correct and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But it's not bringing down the reactivity?
I guess when he's on the prong collar, it's like fine, but sometimes like if he's not on the prong collar, then like we like just have to like pull him away and like drag him away. So I guess like I kind of want him to like not react even if he's not on the prong collar. So like we correct him and everything when he reacts on the prong collar, but then it's like a lot to deal with when he's not on the collar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did your trainer talk to you about the tool and like how, like just the reality of training tools and things like that?
I guess what do you mean by reality?
Is that you're gonna need the collar?
Okay.
Yeah. Realistically speaking.
Okay.
Okay. And usually this is at the end of the conversation or the consultation, but I'll just tell you now.
Okay.
So your prong collar, right? Do you know why it's effective? Because it mimics a dog bite.
Okay.
Okay, that's where it's designed from. Okay, which is nothing bad.
Right.
Dogs bite each other, right? So whoever created prong collar is actually, in my opinion, a genius, because they're like, oh, dogs bite each other, so let's make this tool that mimics a dog bite, right? And I'm assuming you drove here?
Yeah.
Okay. On the expressway?
Yeah.
Did you go the speed limit?
No.
Okay. But you know there's a speed limit.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't you go the speed limit?
I guess because no one else does.
Okay. What if you saw a squad car?
Then I'll probably go a little slower.
I hope you go the speed limit so you don't get a ticket, right?
Yeah.
But do you see what I'm getting at there?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's called opportunistic behavior.
Okay.
Okay. Everybody does it, including animals. It's a part of survival instinct. Okay. So in the animal world, let's say there's a pond and there's an alligator in it, and all the animals around it know. Okay. They won't drink water knowing there's a threat.
Right.
But if they were to see the alligator clear the water, all the animals come to drink water.
Okay.
Okay, that's opportunistic behavior. Now's our chance to do this, right? If you watch a movie where people are escaping, they're waiting for their opportunity, right? Now we're going to try to escape. So for the dog, think of the prong as like a cop on a collar.
Okay.
Okay, when it's on, it's like he knows, like, oh, it's on, there's risk of consequence now. Okay, so that's why dogs behave better. Same thing that goes with the e-collar. Now the drawback to prong collar is if he's too full or too far gone reactivity-wise, you can correct him your harshest with your harshest correction. And if he's at a 20 and you correct it at 10, you're not going to stop the reactivity because he's too far gone. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Prong Caller is a great tool. I love Prong Callers. But I don't use them as much anymore. I incorporate them, but I don't rely on them.
Okay.
Because I know for the average dog owner, a lot of times they don't have the technical skill, or they don't have the strength, or the dog is too large. Like I had a young lady, she was like 90 pounds, and she had a 150-pound Great Dane who was leash reactive.
Yeah.
Okay, so we did prong and e-collar because she needed as much leverage as possible. Okay, but that's one of the most common misconceptions is that you know, people, and the word's training tool, right? Because training implies at some point it's going to be done, right? Is humans, like if you work at your job and they say, hey, we're going to do your promotion and we're going to train you for 2 weeks and then you'll be trained for your new job, right? You could do that, and after the training, you could proactively apply what we learned right away. Dogs don't do that.
Right.
Okay? Dogs, they respond to what you give them. So if you're giving structure and constant consequence for things you don't want and direction, you're going to get that kind of dog. And I think what people are wanting is they train the dog, and the dog decides to be a good dog. Does that make sense? Or chooses to be a good dog, or chooses the right decision. But dogs don't do that. That's a human trait. Dogs are reactive. Humans are both proactive and reactive. You can decide one day, I want to learn how to sing, and go on Google and find a voice teacher and learn how to sing. You can just do that, right? Or if someone says something to you and it upsets you, you can become angry. That's reacting to something, right? So he won't one day wake up and decide, like, you know what? Mom's done a lot of training. She's taught me all the things I should do. I'm gonna be a good boy. Okay? He's reacting, right? Oh, mom's got the e-collar and the prong collar, or mom's got the prong collar, or blah, 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 blah. I need to behave myself, otherwise there's risk of consequence. Okay? That's realistic. In the training world, like you'll see, because there's positive only, which is food-based, then trainers like myself, they use food and prong and e-collar and all these other things, right?
Yeah.
And it's funny because they'll accuse us of like, well, if the dogs are trained, why do you still need your training tools? But it goes back the other way, because if their dogs are trained, why are they still using food?
Right.
You see, like, there's a motivator. There's either positive, you get something, or I feed you.
Yeah.
And then there's a negative. If you do something I don't want, there's a consequence, right? And it's really a blend of those two things that works really well. But it's not that you're, with the training, you know, with good training, it's not that you're constantly having to be doing this. Okay.
Yeah.
At some point with your equipment, you can just take your dog out. You should not see any kind of reactivity. He should be behaved. However, the tools are present.
Okay.
And the presence of the tools, again, it's like that cop, right, on the side of the road. All right, mom's got the equipment. I need to behave myself.
Okay.
But if you go out without it, hey, and then then you get that response. You get misbehavior or whatever.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Okay. So I guess starting on that now. Because I think I read that you didn't want to always have to rely on the collar.
Well, I guess like what I meant by that is even with the collar on, he still reacts.
Yes, that's different.
Yeah, and I feel like I don't always want to have to be like pulling him using the collar. It would be fine if I like don't need to pull it and just have it on him. I think that is fine, but he still kind of like reacts while on the collar.
Sure. So that I understand, because it's like obviously when you're addressing reactivity, the idea is that we don't see reactivity.
Yeah.
Right. So I get that point. So before reaching out, I'm assuming you did research on us, how we train, the tools that we use.
Yeah.
Okay. So prong is one tool that we use. Another is e-collar.
Right.
Okay. Are you familiar with what e-collar is?
Yeah, but I've actually never used one yet.
Okay. So e-collar, the technology they use it on humans. Is e-stim, or a TENS unit, a miniaturized version of it, which is simply a muscle contraction. Have you ever had e-stim or a TENS unit before? So if you go to a chiropractor or physical therapist, like let's say you have a back pain and you have like tight muscles or something, they put these like little circles of wires on your back, and then they turn it on, and the machine runs a slight current that moves your muscles. Okay? And they would raise the number, and the higher the power, the more or the stronger the contraction is. And eventually you would say, hey, that's too much. And they would lower the power and say, how does that feel? And you'd say, sure, I can deal with that. and the machine would move your muscles to help ease the tension. They also use it to break up like scar tissue on muscles. They use it to rebuild strength. They use it a lot in sports rehabilitation therapy. E-collar is actually that very same device, except on a collar. Okay. So when you press the button, it's a muscle contraction. The higher the number, the stronger the contraction, the more uncomfortable it becomes. Okay. So when we deal with reactivity, most trainers or people think, okay, I'm going to put this tool on my dog, and when my dog starts to be bad, I'm going to yank him to punish him or correct him or whatever, right?
Yeah.
But if there's not something else to do, you're going to make steps forward and take steps back, take steps forward, take steps back, because they go hand in hand. He has to have a frame of reference, but at the same time, if he's acting out, we would have to correct the behavior if this doesn't fix the reactivity. Okay? And with the prong collar, let's say you are correcting them, your trainer's correcting them, stuff like that, and it's kind of like you're at a standstill where you made progress and it doesn't feel like it's getting any better. It's just because its intensity cannot be matched by the prong. Okay, and this is very common. This is also why they don't do prong as much anymore, at least not as a standalone training tool, because I already know. So the success rate, if we have food only, we have prong and gentle leader, and then we have e-collar, to make things simple. We have three major styles.
Yeah.
Positive only is single digits success. Okay, you need to have the right dog with the right personality that's very food driven, that doesn't care much about the environment, in order for food to succeed. Okay, which is obviously a very rare dog, right? Because everybody had that dog, there'd be a lot better trained dogs out there. Gentle leader prong collar, better, about 40 to 60% success, but as soon as you remove the leash, now we don't have connection anymore. The dog could run away, or we won't get the dog back, or can't redirect them because we have no physical contact with them.
Yeah.
E-collar gets you as close to 100% as you can get, okay? Even in case of an emergency. So let's say you're at the park, he's running off leash, and somebody blows up a firework and it scares him and he runs away. You can make your dog return with the e-collar. Okay? So even when we lose control, you have the ability to regain control as long as you have like the confidence, or at least the how would you say, kind of the rationale in the moment to like use what you have to make that happen. Typically when a dog runs off on a human, they tend to panic and chase their dog. And I've had that happen to clients. I had that happen to a client, and she lived out in St. Charles. And it was this big old community, and behind everyone's house there was this big old plot of land, like huge land, right? And I came to do a visit, and I was like, how'd it go this week? She's like, oh, Jessie, like she took off. And I'm like, oh, I was like, what happened? She's like, she saw a squirrel, she took off chasing a squirrel. I panicked, and she grabbed the leash, and the leash burned through her, and she got rope burn. And I looked at her, and I was just like, why didn't you just use your collar? And then, like, right then, like, a light switch went off, and she was just like, you know what, like, in the moment, I just panicked. And the funny thing was, there was nowhere the dog could run. It's an enclosed community.
Yeah.
But our instinct is to panic.
Yeah.
She wasn't thinking logically. She wasn't thinking like the chance of this dog escaping are close to zero. I have this 30-foot leash that I can step on, and I have this remote, right? She panicked.
Yeah.
So, but after that, almost whenever, like I actually had my last client earlier with her Rottweiler. Her Rottweiler was 9 months, and when we started recall training last week with the long leash, she told me, she's like, Jessie, my dog always comes to me. And I'm like, okay, but we're gonna do this anyways.
Yeah.
And today she came to me and she said, he took off on her.
Oh no.
Yeah. And she had to grab the leash and she panicked. She didn't use her remote because she panicked.
Yeah.
But she's like, I understand why you said, because people go off of successes, I go off of failures.
Yeah.
And regaining control after failure, right? That's the most important part. So here with the e-collar, it also has the capacity to override the dog. Okay, so like if Shadow, right?
Yeah.
If Shadow's being reactive and I correct him and he keeps lunging and barking, and I correct him and he's lunging and barking, and I correct him and he keeps lunging and barking, clearly my intensity is not enough to stop the behavior, right? But then also I want to see, does this deter the behavior going forward? Because that's how corrections work.
Right.
So like, let's say with running a red light, it's like $100 and $150 ticket. Let's say it was a $5,000 ticket. Do you think people would run the red light as much?
No.
No. because you don't want to risk paying $5,000
Yeah.
for running a stupid red light, right?
Yeah.
So for the dog, when we do a correction, right? So if I got a $5,000 ticket, I'd be like, crap, I'm never running a red light again.
Right.
I'm never gonna try to speed through yellow anymore, right? Because I don't want to pay $5,000.
Yeah.
That's the purpose of a correction, is that it's to stop, but also deter the behavior from repeating. So if I give him one good correction on the prong for reactivity, and then I don't see him lunge and bark at dogs for 6 months, clearly that was a very good correction. Now, sure, he did it 6 months later, but it got me 6 months of peace,
Right.
right? Because he's an animal. So with e-collar, if part of the problem is just the power of the correctional tool, I don't have to worry about that with the e-collar because it's not built or it's not based on strength. So like the young lady earlier with her Great Dane,
Yeah.
90 pounds, 150-pound dog, right? Even I didn't have the physical strength to correct them harsh enough.
Yeah.
We needed the e-collar. And the intensity is all determined by the number. Okay, so it didn't matter that she was yay big. As long as she was at her 80 or whatever, her dog was not going to try anything.
Yeah.
Okay, so in your particular case here, and when you said like he's friendly off leash, right, but on leash he's reactive.
Yeah.
A lot of times it can be a temper tantrum, like kind of like a kid wanting a toy. You know, like him saying, "Hey, I want to play with this dog." But what happens is people tend to restrain, right? And when you restrain like this, you create agitation and more frustration. Okay. So it's kind of like in the movies when someone gets in a fight and they pull them back and they get like even more amped up.
Yeah.
Same thing for dogs. Okay, it's super common. I see it all the time.
Okay.
So in this case, and I know you've done training, is the first thing we cover is the heel, which I'm assuming you covered with your trainer.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how did your trainer have you teach the heel?
It's like kind of like luring him into spot with the tree and then like putting like the trees up here and kind of healing that way. I don't know if that makes sense.
No, I know what you're talking
Okay.
about. Okay. And then what happens if he's not in position?
You just kind of like grab the leash and kind of like tug him into position.
Okay. What if he gets ahead of you?
Kind of like tugging back.
Okay. Yes, that's the problem.
Okay.
All right. Anybody can be a trainer.
Yeah.
Anybody can say they're a trainer, okay? And it could be a business and all that stuff. Unfortunately, in the dog training world, there's a lot of good, not good trainers, okay? So that's part of your problem as well, is that he doesn't actually know heel. Okay? The way that they're having you try to teach it is more for competition style heel, not real life heel. Okay, this is very different. That's where this comes into play. Okay, I don't care about this. I just care that the dog follows me. Okay. Did you watch any of our training videos before booking a consultation?
I did not.
Okay, so one thing I would suggest you do today is you go to our website and then click on a video and it'll take you to our YouTube.
Okay.
Is look up any lesson 1 class. Lesson 1 is always heel. Okay, almost always heel. And you can just watch like the first few minutes whenever the dog is crazy and all over the place, and then watch the end. Okay, and then you'll see the dog at the owner's hip, no tension, following their lead. Okay, and we used to train out of Oz Park. Are you familiar with Oz Park?
No.
It's the busiest park in Chicago.
Okay.
It's over here in Lincoln Park. I mean, baseball games, off-leash dogs, strollers, bikers, rollerbladers, bar mitzvahs, baby showers, like tons of crap going on.
Yeah.
Okay, it's super busy. So if you go to an older video during the summer months, like August or whatever of 2020, we're training at Oz Park and we're getting the dogs to heel with all that crap going on. Okay. E-collar is that effective. Okay, and the method that we use to teach the heel is that effective. That I can be out in the middle of Oz Park with all that crap going on and the dogs are learning to pay attention. Okay, we don't need food. Okay, all you need is your dog, the leash, and your e-collar. Okay, I'm not even touching the dog anymore. I coach you through it. Okay, and e-collar allows me to get the same level of training I was getting prior, because before I would work with the dog in front of you to give you a visual, right, to kind of show you this is how it works, and then I'd give the dog to you, and then I would coach you. The problem with that approach was that I would work the dog through all the hard stuff. So then when I gave the dog to the owner, yes, the dog had a really good concept, but I did all the hard stuff. Okay, now that I'm not touching the dog and it's you with Shadow and I coach you through it, he doesn't know it's me telling you what to do, right? He thinks everything is through you. So you work through all the hard stuff and everything is tied to you from the get-go, okay? And I'm completely out of the picture in terms of the training, because that's like one of the most common things you'll hear is like, oh, the dog listens to the trainer, but not to the owner, right?
Yeah.
It's because we're trainers. We know what to do. So here, you're learning a lot more.
Okay.
You're learning everything. You're learning what to do when he messes up. You're learning what to do when he becomes reactive. You're learning, what to do if he gets off leash and starts running off, because it's you doing all the hands-on stuff. Okay. So with e-collar, it's not about arguing with the dog. Okay. Once we find his appropriate, what we call working level, it's what makes the obedience effective no matter what the environment is. Okay, so that's why, like even my clients, so most of my clients come here now because it's cold outside.
Right.
So we train in my facility, and one concern is, well, Jesse, if I train in your building, what happens when I go to train at home, right? Because it's going to be different. There's going to be stuff to compete with. So the collars that we go 0 to 127. So if in my facility, because it's quiet, or maybe it's a quiet weekend, there's not a lot of dogs here, their number is 25 out of 127, right? And then they go home. All it means is their number is most likely going to be higher because they're going to be in a different environment. But the context and the concept of the heel command stay the same. So it transfers very easy. As long as the owner is at the appropriate number, there really should not be any issue with the obedience. And that's the main thing that holds people back.
Okay.
Is that, let's say we're working with Shadow, and I say and you're telling me he's struggling with paying attention to you, and you're working at 35 or something. And I'll tell you, okay, this week I want you to work at 65. Okay, make it an extreme. And you come back the following week, and I go, how'd it go? You go, Jesse, he's still pretty bad. And I'll go, well, how high did you go? You go, 45. And I'll say 45 is not 65. Right? I'm saying 65 because I know that's going to work, but because you're logical and you're thinking, well, 65 out of 127, that's half the power. People start to feel that. Okay, but it's not about, we're not trying to hurt the dog. Right? But in order to deter something from happening again, the aversive, again, has to be concerning enough for the dog to think to himself, you know what? 65 kind of sucks. I'm not going to bark at dogs anymore. Right? And then we start to see bigger gaps in his bad behavior, because now the aversive is enough to deter him from, or will stop him, but also deter him from repeating the behavior as well. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So, in your case, when we deal with reactivity, I'm picking up frustration. I'm picking up a lack of really knowing what to do. Okay, he doesn't have a formal heel. Is the first class we always teach heel because it's the easiest. I shouldn't say the easiest. It's the so if you put an e-collar on a dog and you press the button, what you're going to see is it makes the dog move. Okay, because the dog doesn't know where it's coming from, and they tend to want to move away. So because of flight response. So since it makes the dog move, we use heel, which is a moving behavior, right? You're walking, to teach him how it turns on and how it turns off. Okay, so he feels the collar, he wants to move, so he's able to get that out of the system. But at the same time, it's teaching him to follow your lead. Okay, and you're indirectly disciplining him for not following you should he pass through or whatever. And then you take that and I go, here's your homework, go practice for the week. Okay, then you come back in class 2. And I'll say, how'd it go, Jesse? Not Jesse, how'd it go, Karen? And you go, great, Jesse, his reactivity went down 80%. And I'll say, awesome, what is he still barking at? Oh, if a dog barks at him, he'll still bark. I go, yep, that's pretty normal. We're gonna make a couple of changes, we'll shift a couple of things. And then we work on the second half of heel, because it's a 2-part exercise. See you next week. You come back the following. How are we doing? Jesse, even better. We only had 1 instance of reactivity, and then I'll say what happened. You explain it to me, and then I'll kind of explain whether or not, the why it happened, so you understand the rationale. And then we just start building off of that. Okay? Okay. So I know the concern is behavior, right? And obedience and behavior are different, but there's a little bit of a gray area. So think of obedience as education, sit, stay, come, math, English, science. Think of behavior as morality. Don't jump, don't bark, don't bite, don't lie, don't steal, don't cheat. Okay, so someone can be a genius, but also be a bad person, and someone could be a very good person, but not be the smartest, right? They don't correlate. So it's the same thing for obedience. He can have all the tricks in the world, but still be a bad dog. still be reactive, but know 1,000 tricks, right? So it's not the heel command or the heel obedience that's helping him. It's the consequence behind it. It's the discipline from the e-collar that's helping him learn to not be reactive. Does that make sense?
Okay.
Because think of the e-collar as a bite on a button. Every time you press it, that muscle contraction happens, you're biting him. Okay? So, like right now, I gave him, I think, a total of 3 corrections. And you see how he's calm now? So the first correction I gave him was a firmer one. Probably on a scale of 1 to 10, I think it was like a 3 or 4. And he gave a little yip. And he gave a yip because he was surprised, not because he was in pain. Okay? Then he started to whine a little bit, and I gave him a little pop, and then he kind of looked at me and came over and he laid down. Right? And there was one where I think he was facing you, and then when I corrected him, he turned around and faced me. Right? Because he's saying, hey, you're talking my language, and apparently you're somebody I should be mindful of. Does that make sense? So with the e-collar, it's the same kind of conversation, except it's at the press of a button. Okay? Because nowadays, with remotes and our cell phones and even our cars are push start now, everything's button-based for humans, right? So for you, it's easier because it's button, but for him, it's easier because it's like you're biting him. Okay? You're communicating with him with his language. Okay? And you see right there how he started to cry? And I gave him on a scale of 1 to 10, a 1 to 2. And right off the bat, just a stretch and this. Okay? So when I'm correcting him, people, when they look at physicality, they interpret it wrong. They interpret it like you're abusing or you're hurting the dog. Does he look like he's hurt? Does he look relaxed? Yeah. Because I'm not letting him, become overwhelmed. Because when you first came in, he was just like, where are we? What's going on? Who's this guy coming in? What's the smell? Oh my God, it smells like dogs in here. What's that, right?
Yeah.
And he was barking because it was too much stuff. So I just said, give me your dog, correction, and tell him, chill out. And every now and then, another correction to not let him escalate. Okay? So the more structure you provide, the more he becomes this kind of dog. Okay? The lack of structure provides the previous dog.
Right.
Okay? So it's like with school, things are really different now, but I was raised old school, I was spanked. So schools are designed to educate children.
Yeah.
They're not designed to discipline children, right? That's the, I was gonna say owner, that's the parent's job. Parents discipline the children so that when they go to school, they're well behaved so that they can learn.
Yeah.
That's how that's supposed to work, okay? With dogs, you're in charge of both. You're in charge of educating him, but also correcting him to teach him what you don't want him to do.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Okay.
Do you have questions so far?
Yeah, I guess for like e-collars, like for prong collars, like there's different levels of correction. So for e-collars, are there like
Same.
different levels?
Mhm.
So do you have to like set it each time?
Correct. So it's a dial. It goes 0 to 127 in increments of 1.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, right? And it's very intuitive. Okay, in the beginning, it might be a little kind of, you're having to like look at it more and kind of just fiddle with it, but once you get used to it, you won't even look at it anymore because you'll develop a feel for it, okay? So like let's say, like I said earlier, 25 at the facility could be the number, but then in the neighborhood you might need 45, right? Because he's in his territory, or maybe there's like dogs behind fences and stuff like that you need more power in order to get them to focus, okay?
Okay. So I guess like how do you determine what level he's
We do
at?
that in the first class.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's why, and if you watch a lesson 1, all the, like that, you see it firsthand. Okay? So, let's say you sign up, you're on the calendar, I'll send you an email and I'll say, watch these videos to prep you for class, okay? Then you show up to class and we can jump straight into training and I help you find that level.
Okay.
I help you recognize it, okay? So you're doing all of this. I'm walking you through it, but you're doing all this stuff yourself.
Okay.
Once we find his appropriate level, then we start the training process. And that level may change during that training process, okay? How he responds is what determines the collar, okay? So I don't say you have a German Shepherd, he's gonna be a 75, okay? I could have 5 German Shepherds with 5 different numbers in the same setting, okay? Because it comes down to temperament, personality type, physical resiliency, size of dog, contact because he's got a thicker coat, right? So a lot of variables there. So instead, I teach you how to recognize what he needs, so you're not getting caught on numbers, okay? Because that tends to happen to people, where they're like, oh my God, my dog was perfect on 10 today. And they think that 10 will be the permanent number, when realistically speaking, it's not.
Right.
It could be 10 one day, but the next day it could be 110.
Yeah.
Okay? Other questions?
I guess like, for the videos that you have online, is that always going to be the structure of the class?
For the most part.
Okay.
So when it's obedience, because behavior is the variable,
Yeah.
okay, is my theory is if we teach a proper heel, my style,
Yeah.
that should fix the reactivity, okay? Is there the possibility that it doesn't fix some of it? Yes. So that's why you're in feedback. So if we come to class 3 and you're like, you know what, Jesse, he's reactive 50% of the time, then I go, okay, what's happening in that 50% of the time that he's becoming reactive? Because I got to pick up information, right? Because there's a lot of different contexts. And almost always it's really just play with the number. Because remember, aversives are meant to stop or deter things, right? So if you're operating at 35 and I'm telling you go to 65 and you're not doing that, well, that's why he's 50% reactive, because we're not going to the appropriate level, okay? But then for your dog, because it's just reactivity, right? You would have a general structure. So what determines the length of time and the cost of training and everything is simply how much control do you want over your dog. If your concern is, I just want to walk my dog, have him not be reactive, and have reliable recall, then I go 6 classes. If you say, I want a fully off-leash trained dog, sit, stay down, come place, heel, then I go, that's 12 classes. If you want something in the middle, that's 9 classes, okay? So what you're wanting from Shadow and how much control you're needing is just determined by your preference, okay? The way I teach is I give you what you need, okay? So if you say, Jesse, my main concern is the reactivity, leash walking, and come when called, 6 classes. And then if, like, let's say everything's going really smoothly, and we get to class 5, and his progression is going really well, we can teach more stuff, right? Because you got 2 classes left. But if you're still struggling with reactivity for whatever reason, then we just use a class to cover the reactivity, and maybe another if needed, right? But it's really straightforward once you understand how dog behavior works and how to correct. So like for me growing up, you know, I was raised old school. If I didn't do my homework, if I talked back to my mom, or if I like stayed up too late, spank, spank, spank.
Right.
Right, one consequence for a number of misbehaviors. Same thing for dogs. If he tries to jump on a dog, bark at a dog, or mount a dog, bite, bite, bite. That's the aversive, right? So it's like, hey, I don't want him to bark out the window. It's just consequence. Because when people make things more complicated, because they'll say, hey, Jesse, my dog barks out the window, and I call my dog, and my dog comes back, but then he goes back to barking out the window. And I go, yeah. I'm like, because you called your dog, right? And they said, yeah. I'm like, and your dog came, right? And they go, yeah. I'm like, so he did what you said? And they go, yeah. I'm like, but nothing said don't bark out the window. That's the difference, okay? So it's just behavior we don't want, apply an aversive, okay? So that's pretty straightforward. The part that's not straightforward is, let's say he happens to be a tough dog and he needs a harsher or higher level correction. If you are emotionally uncomfortable with correcting him at a 95 out of 127, but that's what he needs, you're gonna get stuck. Okay, that again, that's the most common thing that I see with my clients. But otherwise, in terms of obedience and control and length of time, it's determined by how much you're wanting. Other questions?
Yeah, so I guess like when you correct him while he's like whining, is that like a behavior that we don't want? Because he's like pretty vocal.
Yeah, because that little whine leads to big old barking.
Okay.
Right, and also you know why he's whining? He's anxious. Okay, right now he does not want to be still.
Yeah.
What's he want to do?
Probably walk around.
Walk around, do his own thing, right?
Yeah.
And you might go like, Jessica, but what's wrong with him walking around doing his own thing? Well, earlier when you came in and he was walking around doing his own thing, what was he doing?
Barking.
He was barking.
Yeah.
Do you see where I'm getting at?
Yeah.
Now, I'm not saying your dog has to be still all the time, but what I'm doing here, because I just have an hour with you right now, okay, is I'm not teaching him anything obedience-wise. I've not said sit, stay down, come, or anything like that, right? I simply corrected him for the anxiousness he had earlier, and then when he starts to pine a bit, I give him a smaller pop to keep him as close to 0 as possible. Now, theoretically speaking, with the heel command, that may actually resolve this stuff here. Okay, so if you go to my videos, a really good example was Rosie. Okay, she just started training. You can see her consultation. She's sitting there, whatever, right? The dog is pacing and whining all over the place. She does not stop. In the training session, first class, because she's only had one, I see her tomorrow. If you watch the video, once the training starts, about 10 minutes once the training starts, she's calm and laying like this, completely silent. And we did nothing to correct the anxiety. We did nothing like I did here. I'm directly correcting him. I did none of that. It was simply the discipline behind the heel and the e-collar that helped soothe her and helped her turn off. Because anxiety stems from overstimulation or the brain wanting to move. So like anxious people tend to pace, right, or move a lot. Same thing for dogs. His brain is telling him, move, do something. So when I counter him and I say you can't move, it has to have an outlet for the anxiety, so then we get whining. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So the way I hope this would work, because he's an animal, there's no guarantees, this is easier for sure, is when you do the heel and you come back class 2, something I would expect you to say is, he's a lot calmer now. Because now he's getting formal discipline, now he's getting formal structure that he understands, and it's being repeated 3 times a day. You know, because most people walk their dogs 3 times a day on average.
Right.
So it gives a structure. So it helps pacify a lot of dogs. Because if you were to live with other dogs, feral dogs, he would be completely balanced. Because if he got out of line, they would bite him. They don't allow that to escalate. Okay? Is this all making sense?
Yeah.
And definitely watching a video will help you see it.
Okay.
And I have, so like, you know, if you don't want to watch a full-blown hour-long video, I have a playlist called like training highlights or dog highlights. If you click on it, a good example is Lake, who's a pit bull. They came, and the first class you see her lunging and barking at me, right? And not in a friendly manner. She is very agitated.
Oh gosh.
And you see me in the video talking, and I'm explaining everything, and at the end of the class, you see her completely calm and just passive and like panting because she's venting stress, or you see me kind of like doing this. Whereas in the beginning, just me being present was causing her to lunge and bark, right? But at the end, I'm all like walking around and I touch her, she does nothing because she was calmed down, okay? So you get to see it happen, and it's clipped, and then also I explain what's going on to give you an idea. He is nowhere near what she was in terms of reactivity, okay? But I will tell you, she made great progress in one class. But because they were too soft, they're struggling with the reactivity because they have a hard time staying at that 60 to 80 range to correct her. Okay? But that's not my problem.
Right.
That's their problem.
Right.
Because I gave them the answer, and she actually came here this past week for daycare. So yeah, that's how it's supposed to work. Okay? Every now and then, it doesn't work that way, but we have to factor in genetics. Also, the factor in, of course, is the human doing the work and being consistent. A big problem is people get dogs for companionship, right? But dogs don't need companionship, right? So you can't be your dog's buddy and authority figure at the same time, right? It's like being a parent.
Yeah.
You're a parent, and like sure you do things with your kids, right? But like let's say my mom took me to Chuck E. Cheese's and I started swearing at her, she still smacked me across the face, right? Don't swear at your mom, right? Even though she took me to Chuck E. Cheese's.
Right.
So it's the same thing for dogs, okay? Dogs need an authority figure, not a buddy. And that relationship is what happens if it's too much buddy. Like I don't tell my friends what to do, right? We're friends, but I can tell my employees what to do because they're my employees and the employer, right? So it's that same kind of relationship. It's like, you know, mom to son, and you just have to talk to him in his language, and you can still give him affection, you can still give him treats and all that stuff, but you have to balance that relationship with appropriate structure and discipline. Okay? Other questions?
Yeah, so when you're like using an e-collar, does that mean you have to like hold on to the remote at all times to like catch the correction?
Yes and no. So like let's say you're outside, right? And you're working with him and you're training in the beginning. In the beginning, because you're training, you're gonna be doing a lot of e-collar, right? But then as you start to get all the habits in the structure, you start to use it less, right? So like me, if I'm walking my dogs, you'll see the e-collar like clipped to my belt, okay? Because they're trained. And if like a squirrel were to run across like that, like I just give a tap on the button and it redirects the dog, whatever, right? So once you get him to a point where you're like, oh yeah, he's pretty good, you know, you can wear it around your neck, you can clip it to your belt or whatever. You're only having it on him when you're gonna need it. So like every time you take him for a walk, if he's gonna be off leash anywhere, maybe when you have guests come over in the beginning because he's really excited, and then after he calms down, you can take it off. You're using the e-collar really like in times where you can't control everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So if he's a great dog inside the house and you have no problems with him, you don't need the collar. Okay? It's only when you're going to be actively using it. And then the application of it, if done correctly, should become less and less over time.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, like, so would you use like a prong collar and an e-collar
You
when
can.
you're walking?
Mm-hmm. They work really well together. I don't know what I would do for you.
Right.
A lot of times I go straight to e-collar and remove everything else because I want to see what is the e-collar doing. Because if I use prong and e-collar, I don't know what's doing the work. Okay? They're perfectly safe to use with each other. They don't, you know, interact or like, you know, the e-collar doesn't start shocking the dog or anything like that. I'm not the e-collar, the prong collar. They're separate because it's a controlled, centralized connection. So he'll only feel the stimulation where the e-collar can contact.
Okay.
Other questions?
Yeah, so if, like we do like get lessons and stuff, is there like a specific e-collar that you recommend?
Yeah, so how much does Shadow weigh here?
He's like 64 pounds.
64?
Yeah.
You have two choices, and Maria will send you this information.
Okay.
There's the Dr. 2300, which is meant for 70 pounds and under, and then there's the Dr. Black Edition, which is meant for 70 pounds and over, okay? The reason why I would suggest the Black Edition is because you have to account for when he's in reactivity mode, he's adrenalized, and dogs are physical animals, that you want to know that you have enough power to shut him down, okay? Also, because he's got a thicker coat, it affects the connection, so he won't also feel the full power. So having the Black Edition, all it means is your number would be lower, okay? Because the 2300 is a lower output, the Black Edition is a higher output. So 60 on the 2300 could be 35, 40 on the Black Edition. Okay, so you're just operating at a lower range because it has a much higher output.
Okay. Okay. Lots to think about.
Yeah, and they run, so the 2200 is 287-ish with tax. The Black Edition is about 325-ish with tax. Fully waterproof, both the transmitter and the receiver. 3/4 to 1 mile range, depending on which model you buy. They last for years. I've had mine for 8 years, so like they're pricey, but they're gonna last you a really long time. The most common thing is they are they have rechargeable lithium batteries like your cell phone, and over time that battery gets worn out, right? So like, you know, maybe in 3 years you start to notice that it's not holding the charge. You go to the website, you look for your collar, you look for a replacement battery, 15, 20 bucks, you buy it, you open it up, you put the new battery in, you screw it up with closed, and then you're good to go again. Okay, so that's like the most common thing, is that the battery dies. You just buy the battery. Other questions?
I guess like how long would it take for a dog to kind of like understand what the e-collar is doing? Like,
Within the first class.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's quick.
Okay.
Because we're talking his language.
Yeah.
So like the class, I just had a lady right now, she did just her first class today. And within 20 minutes, she's like, oh my God, this was so fast, I'm impressed. I'm like, yeah, because we're talking the dog's language. The reason why you're struggling with all this here is because it's not the dog's language.
Okay.
Okay, once you, and again, watch a video, and you'll just see like, holy crap, like he got this done in one class. And then watch the beginning of a lesson 2 video, and you'll see a week later, the owner is walking with their dog at their hip because they are communicating with their dog like another dog would. So it's like if someone speaks Spanish and I'm trying to teach them something in English, do you think I'm going to get through to them? No, you gotta talk Spanish. Yeah. Right? Same thing for dog, you gotta talk dog. So once you get that concept and how they learn, it's a very quick process. That's why my programs are short. And I know, as long as it's obedience, I know what I can get done in 3, 6, 9, and 12 weeks. The biggest variable is always behavior. Okay? Because if the dog's been reactive and aggressive for 5 years, that's a 5-year habit we're trying to break. Yeah. Now it still works pretty quick, but it's a variable because sometimes I come in and I think this is going to be easy and it's very difficult, and other times I think it's going to be difficult and it's super easy. Okay, so there's no real way to predict it until like we're actively working on things.
Yeah. Do you guys use treats at all, or is it mostly just collar?
I just use the e-collar. I'm not opposed to treats, but you're already going to have a lot on your mind already.
Yeah.
Okay, because you have to watch your body language, your leash, the dog, the e-collar. And food just adds in another, how do you say, level of difficulty that is not necessary. Like 99% of dogs that we train, we don't use food.
Okay.
Not needed.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. Do you guys do like in-home training, or is it just at?
We do. There's a couple of options.
Yeah.
We have in facility, right at Oz Park, we changed it to Palmer Square because it's closer here because of the cold. And that's one rate. There's in-home, which is more expensive because with everything happening, everybody was coming to me or we were meeting at one place, and now it's changed the way my business operates. So if like somebody in the city booked me to like go to their home, it's more expensive, right? I think you're like out in the suburb.
Yeah, well, I'm moving to the city.
You're moving to the
but
city.
I just won't have a car, so I'm trying to.
I gotcha.
Yeah.
So if you don't want to pay the more expensive rate, what you can do is work with Enrique, okay? And like right now, he's getting his own clients, and something like this is in his range of skills that he can address it. So you could pay the in-facility rate, which is cheaper, but you would just be working with Enrique, but at your home.
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And something like this is perfect. Is something he can take care of. Okay, he's a solid trainer. He's been with me over a year now.
Okay.
And he trains all the board and train or daycare and train dogs that come through here. He's getting his own in-home visits now. He actually just had one today that's out in South Barrington. He's training a 8 or 9 month old Rottweiler, and he's doing great. So that's an option for you. Okay. Other questions?
So beyond like the leash reactivity, you said like 12 classes is like totally off leash control, or is
Correct.
Okay.
So the way I would describe it is 6 weeks is I walk my dog and we go to the dog park.
Yeah.
Okay. 9 weeks is I walk my dog, go to the dog park, and we go to restaurants. The 12-week is all that stuff, and you go to the dog beach, and you go hiking, and he's going to be off leash in unenclosed areas. That's the full off leash, right? So then you get all 6 commands: sit, stay down, come, place, heel. Okay. So the level of the reactivity stuff, as long as that's the variable, I'm not anticipating it's going to be a problem because he's friendly off leash, so he's not aggressive.
Yeah.
He's just being a big brat and frustrated and barking.
Yeah.
Right? Plus he's a German Shepherd, and German Shepherds are notorious for being vocal.
Yeah.
So at minimum 6 to fix the problem, okay, and we get the heel and the recall down. The recall has to be off leash reliable. Okay, so regardless of whatever program you're going to get, of 6, 9, or 12, the recall, you're going to have the ability to have it be off leash reliable. You just have to do your homework. Okay, so heel is the fastest thing that dogs learn because you walk your dog multiple times a day. Recall tends to be the longest because you have to go somewhere, like the park, let him be loose, and then call him, but then also practice around distractions to make it realistic. Okay, so that one tends to take longer. Everything else, like sit, stay, down, in place, you can do within the comfort of your own home in terms of training. So if you're doing all that stuff like on a regular basis and you're putting time into it, there's no reason why you wouldn't have control over your dog, right? But if it's like you're training here and there, you're not applying it, and the most important dog training is applied dog training, meaning when you walk with them and you're using your heel, you're going to a restaurant and you have them lay down at your feet. Maybe you go to the park and like you tell them to stay while you go to throw something away. Like, you're using the obedience, and that's just making it functional. Okay? So we train for the real world, is what I tell people.
Yeah.
Anything else?
I think that's all the questions I had.
Other than that, there's, I already went over the e-collar, opportunistic behavior, or whatever.
Yeah.
Because that's another big thing is people always ask, like, well, if you're such a good trainer, like, why would I need the tool post-training? Because opportunistic behavior. Dogs, the whole saying, like, oh, your dog wants to please you. That's just some BS that people say that makes them feel good.
Yeah.
Dogs are self-serving. If something makes him feel good, he's going to do that. Okay. Okay, he's not thinking in the back of his head like, man, if I come when mom calls me right now, it's gonna make her feel real good. So I'm gonna do it. Like,
Yeah.
do it. Okay. So other than that, nothing out of the ordinary here. I see this stuff all the time. So like I said, if you just want to see how this works, feel free to go to the YouTube channel, watch our videos. That's why they're there. And then Maria will get in contact with you. Don't be concerned if it takes her a little bit.
Okay.
We are swamped with consultations and new clients,
Yeah.
which is good because 2020 was not a great year. But if you're like, yeah, I'm sold, like, you know, when you leave, you can just email her and tell her, hey, Maria, please send me the information. And then she'll get to you as soon as she can. Other than that, this should be pretty straightforward. Okay?
Okay.
Anything else?
I guess. Sorry, one last question. So he does like to chase after like animals, like small animals and stuff. Like, would the e-collar help with that if he's like already running?
Yeah, so I love dogs that have prey drive. Okay, so I don't want to, me personally, don't want to kill that.
Yeah.
He's a dog, he's a predator. What I want is control.
Uh-huh.
So for instance, we have a dog that we finished training, his name's Gilmore. And we were at Oz Park and he's crazy for squirrels.
Yeah.
And he's 100 feet away, just books it. You know, the owner says break, and he goes, and break means you're free. And he takes off, and he starts running to the squirrel. And maybe 3/4 of the way there, the owner calls him, boom, straight back.
Okay.
And then he comes back, and they praise him, and they go break, and he runs back to the squirrel, and they call him again, and boom, comes straight back, okay? So there's a couple ways of approaching it. One is, if he's got good prey drive, I let him do that stuff. And I use that to practice my training. Because now you're teaching control around prey. So now it's like, hey bud, you can chase those squirrels. But when I call you, you're gonna come back.
Okay.
Okay, so you're using that to your advantage, which is great because you have a distraction, but also a reward. Because if he does a really good recall, you're like, good boy, and then he holds for a bit, and you're like, okay, break. Boom, now you just got rewarded for doing a good return. And you don't need treats, and you don't need a ball or anything.
Yeah.
You just use squirrels. Or, let's say his prey drive is a bit too intense. We can taper it down using the collar. You cannot remove it because it's his genetic code.
Right.
To have, if he's very prey driven, it is built into him. So he'll always want the squirrel. He'll just be more, he'll have more impulse control, where he just won't book it out of nowhere. Okay?
Okay.
Anything else?
Does a collar also help with like picking things like off the floor? Like would he, I guess like when something's in his mouth, would he know to?
Oh, releasing something?
Yeah.
So that would require teaching a formal release command,
Right.
like drop. It's very simple to teach. It would just take time to practice it.
Okay.
Okay, so it's literally like he's got a stick in his mouth, and you can either teach him don't chew sticks, and you just correct him for it, or you would say drop, and then use the collar until he spits it out.
Okay.
And then over time, when he hears you say drop, he'll just spit it out.
Okay. Okay, because I guess like my issue with him right now is sometimes he has something in his mouth and then he just swallows it.
Is this inside or outside?
Outside.
Outside, yeah. So that sounds to me like overstimulation, frustration.
Uh-huh.
Like earlier, the constant need of needing something.
Yeah.
And what's happening is he's redirecting towards sticks or rocks or mulch or whatever, because dogs are very mouth expressive. Licking, chewing, panting, barking, biting, salivating, yawning.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a lot of it's mouth based. So when the dogs get too agitated and they're frustrated, they tend to want to like chew on things to alleviate that frustration.
Okay.
So it's possible that the healing exercise will actually resolve that issue because
Okay.
it's going to help calm him down.
Okay.
If it doesn't calm him down, what we would do is when he goes to try to pick up something, you would simply correct him using the e-collar. And over time, he would learn, okay, don't pick up crap off the ground because then I get automatic correction. Okay?
Okay, that sounds good.
Okay?
I think that's all the questions I had. Thank you.
You're welcome. So Maria, I'm sorry, if you have any other questions, just reach out to Maria.
Okay.
She'll follow up with you, or you can shoot her an email to say, hey, I'm sold, or whatever, take some time to mull it over. You can do 6, 9, or 12.
Okay.
6 at minimum to address what we're dealing with here.
Yeah.
12 if you're wanting like a fully off-leash trained dog. And then if you're wanting, let her know like you would like to do in-home. And then you can either work with me, but that would be at a higher rate, or you can work with Enrique, which would be at the normal facility rate. And he will travel to you, and he's a solid trainer.
Does he also do like the full 12 weeks?
Yeah, he knows the whole spiel.
Okay.
He's been with me for a year and stuff, so, okay?
That sounds good.
Yeah.
All right,
All right,
thank
so I'll
you.
give you
Hi, Glenn.
this guy, and then I'll help you out.